Hunter x Hunter is a show widely regarded and acclaimed for seemingly knowing when to break and when to adhere to narrative convention. Although this is much of the reason I enjoy the show so much, sometimes Togashi breaks the rules to a troubling effect. There is a rule in screenwriting that the first episode of your TV show should set up everything you need to know in the plot going forward. The first episode of Hunter x Hunter tells us a lot about Gon's personality, lets us into his world, and despite how slow it is, I think it does a good job at enticing the viewer to watch more. However, there is one notable thing the first episode tends to be vague about. The first episode tells us Gon's main goal is to become a hunter. What is a hunter? You see, it's kind of like, Is this a hunter? Is that a hunter? What about him? He looks like a hunter. What about her? She looks like a hunter. I know she likes Hunter x Hunter, so that would make it Hunter, 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 Hunter. Well, that's fine. I'm sure we'll find out later what a hunter is. Yeah, that's still a little unclear. So you mean to tell me this show has the word hunter not once, but twice in its title, and for some reason, what makes a hunter is never really clearly defined or explained. I mean, it is there in the show, but only there in the same sense that you'd say a house is all there after a tornado rips through and turns it into an unrecognizable pile of rubble. I mean, it's all there, but I sure as shit don't know where to put everything. Not without some serious thinking involved. But don't worry, everybody. I'm here to tell you all I've put the puzzle together. So come with me on this journey to answer our fundamental question. What is a hunter? The Hunter Association could aptly be described as an elite and selective organization that grants its members resources and autonomy that they otherwise would not have. In English, the Hunter Association is akin to a network of highly skilled individuals in every profession imaginable. Think of it as the alumni network of an Ivy League school, or perhaps even just Mensa. Being a hunter comes with innumerable perks, like free med school, free public amenities, and a passport that lets them go to any country. It's not uncommon for many hunters to be extraordinarily wealthy individuals who sit atop the highest ladder of society. To get further insight into what the Hunter organization values, we should look at the 10 Hunter Commandments. The commandments can be split into 3 categories. Commandments 8 to 10 deal strictly with the process for replacement of the chairman and are not relevant to the conversation at hand. That leaves the other 2 categories: what constitutes a good hunter, and the sanctity and ethos of a hunter. Technically, once one becomes a hunter, they do not have to do anything with their license. They could sell it and make an extraordinary amount of wealth, or they could bury it in their backyard, right next to Uvo. Once you become a hunter, you cannot have your license revoked. There are no requirements to stay active in the association, and instead, the commandments offer an incentive structure. Hunters can achieve a 1, 2, and 3-star license respectively. Each star has specific requirements that build upon the last, but in short, to get stars, hunters must make an outstanding achievement in some field and mentor an up-and-coming hunter. This system is honestly not too different from one you might see in academia, where professors are rewarded for research in their field and encouraged to teach the next generation. All of this is fairly simple to follow, and it reveals that the association itself, at its initial roots, valued the advancement of human progress and achievement. All of this is easy to understand, which leaves us only with the first 4 commandments. Commandment 3 has already been touched upon, as it deals with how licenses are unique and can only be issued once. Commandment 4 states that hunters shall not go after one another unless a hunter commits heinous crimes. This law implies that the association was designed so that hunters would work collaboratively rather than competitively, although some of the dynamics we witness in the show may imply otherwise. Commandment 2 says that every hunter shall know some martial arts and be familiar with Nen. Given their line of work and that this is the ultimate secret of the association, this all makes sense. But there is something I want to point out right now. Although all these things apply to hunters, they are not exclusive or even necessarily predominant to them. There are plenty of Nen users who don't have a license. There are plenty of outstanding achievers in some field who aren't hunters. Being a hunter certainly makes these processes easier, but merely listing these traits doesn't feel sufficient to me, if we want to distinguish who is and isn't a hunter. So that leaves one commandment, the first commandment, which states,
それはハンター10か条のその1にも厳然と定められている。
And now we're back to the initial problem of what the hell does that mean? What does it mean to be on the hunt? Does the show offer an explanation anywhere? Yes. Yes, it does. This is what I'm dubbing the spirit of hunting. Let's jump back to the very first arc. During the hunter exam, Gon learns that in order to properly hunt, one must wait for their opponent to be distracted with another target, and then intercept them at that moment. In other words, to beat his opponent, Gon has to make his enemy move as he wants, and then surprise them. If we were to generalize this concept, one might call it a trap. That's the most ridiculous and pretentious sentence I have ever written. But for real, his character literally states this is what it means to hunt. This works well as a resolution to the fourth phase of the exam, but what you may not have noticed is just how ubiquitous this ethos tends to be throughout the show. In York New City, Kurapika stands on the sidelines with his coworkers as the Shadow Beasts fight Uvogin. Rather than jumping into the fray with them, Kurapika first observes and waits. When Uvogin is paralyzed and distracted right after defeating Porcupine, Kurapika takes this exact moment to snag Uvo. When Kurapika and Uvo face off again, Kurapika arranges everything with his partners so that Uvogin will be led directly to him and no one else. After he successfully guides Uvo towards him, the two fight, and of course given Kurapika's trap, there was no possible way Uvo was ever going to win. This would not be the last time this strategy is even used in this arc. When Gon and Killua are held captive in the lobby by the Phantom Troop, the two of them try to escape the moment the lights go out. This sends members of the troop into a chaotic frenzy, and although it looks like they may almost escape, ultimately, Gon and Killua remain caught. However, while they were distracted with those two, Kurapika managed to quietly take the leader of the troop from right under their noses. So again we see this pattern. Wait for your opponent to be distracted, and then at the moment of their most intense focus, strike quickly and quietly. The more you think about this concept, the more you can see it at other points in the show. Gon traps Genthru with the boulder, Morel leads Leal to the basement of the church, Netero prepares a suicide bomb in location to detonate, and it's at times like these that you might even start to remember what Jing had to say during the election to Beans.
狙った通りに獲物が動けばハンター冥利だろ.
Yet again, we see that hunters take the approach of properly waiting and steering their opponent to an outcome rather than charging head on. So here, we can see the ethos emerging in a political rather than a violent context. With that, I hope I have sufficiently demonstrated this pattern of behavior amongst hunters in the show. But let's consider who doesn't use this strategy. The first instance of Nen combat we see between high-level users is the fight in Heaven's Arena between Hisoka and Castro. During the fight, Hisoka is constantly assessing his opponent's prowess to build a strategy, set bungee gum, and have him walk into a trap. Castro, on the other hand, after having his double exposed, blitzes down his opponent. Yet again, we see Hisoka aims to distract and trap, while Castro does not. When the Phantom Troop invades the auction, they just walk in and shoot up the place. There's no tailing, no adaptation, they just walk in guns blazing. When Uvogin fights the Mafia and Shadow Beasts, he just lets loose. Pito leaps from a tree to kill Kite, Meruem charges repeatedly at Netero. More often than not, when an antagonist is not a hunter, they rarely seem to distract and trap. That is not to say they never employ any strategy in combat, or that this trend is even totally ubiquitous across the board. Crollo would certainly beg to differ with my theory. But still, it's a pattern of behavior that seems to be true more often than not. More than likely, this stems somewhat naturally from the plot. In Hunter x Hunter, most of the villains are constructed to be demonstrably stronger than the heroes, meaning they usually don't have to rely directly on trapping their opponent to win. Generally, they can just brute force their way in a fight or go with some basic plan to guide their attacks. Rarely do the villains have to coax the heroes into falling for a specific setup. Now, to go on a little bit of a tangent, There's a sentiment amongst older veterans I know that snipers are the worst of the worst because they fight hidden at a distance. In other words, they fight without incurring much risk. It's intuitive to understand why soldiers would be resentful of enemy snipers. From their own perspective, their behavior is a little bit cowardly. I just want to say this is not a commentary on soldiers or war strategy, it's merely an anecdotal, allegorical comparison. Opinions expressed are not my own. But when pondering why veterans might feel this way about snipers, I think it becomes easier to understand something about hunters. The ethos of a hunter requires careful preparation and tactics. There's no romanticized glory in the way a hunter is supposed to fight. No armies of people charging onto the battlefield to defeat some larger enemy. So if you didn't notice the juxtaposition of what Nove said about Gone and what we witnessed on screen, I'll spell it out in plain letters. Hunters are not heroes.
ハンターってやつは手前勝手なもんだ。自分が欲しいもののために他のものを捨てていく。
The profession of a hunter requires that there is always a hunted. Someone must always lose. And if hunters want to win, they have to be selfish. Which easily explains why they tend to be narrow-minded, obsessive with their goals, and dedicated to their craft above other obligations in life. Because if one is to approach their life in all aspects as a hunter, they must do whatever it takes to win. And this, more than anything, is what distinguishes a hunter from a non-hunter. Not nen, not wealth, and not power, but this. This ethos, this willingness to trap, and this stubborn dedication, more than any other trait, is the true heart of what it means to be a hunter. Thanks for watching, everybody. Remember to subscribe and like and share and all that good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna drop the accent now before that upsets someone else. Hunter x Hunter month was fun. I got plenty of more video ideas for the future, and now that I'm out of school, expect more frequent uploads. I really want to do more with this channel now that I have time on my hands, and I hope to see many of you around in the next one.